Say and spell your name for me.
Zachary. That's my first full name.
And your last name.
Zoe, Zhou.
Zach, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Talk to me about what happened on Saturday. Take your time.
So, I was in Minnesota at the time. I worked there. And my mom called me at 6:30 p.m. I actually missed it because I usually have my phone on silence. So I called her 30 minutes later, around 7 o'clock. And she told me that my dad had been hit by a car and was in critical condition. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I asked her if she was serious. She was. I've been told afterwards that it was a gray SUV traveling at a very high speed, around 70 miles per hour. My dad and my mom were walking, holding hands on the grass right outside our house over there. The car veered off the road, hit him, and he flew 100 feet and hit concrete. And one of his shoes flew even further. So, there was immense internal bleeding. He was unconscious. And his heart stopped around 12 a.m. So it all happened in maybe 5 hours. I'm sure the hospital did everything they could. I was first told by my brother that he was stable and that he was going to be in the ICU. But then at 11:59, I think it was maybe March 20th, he calls me and says, "Be prepared." So he FaceTimes me, and I see my dad with all these tubes, and there's this long red bruise from his shoulder to his chest. He wasn't conscious. Yeah. I said, "I love you." Yeah. My brother said, "I love you." My mom said, "I love you." And my mom was so strong and so beautiful in that moment. She was speaking in Chinese, and I don't understand Chinese that well, but I'm pretty sure she said, "You always walk so fast. You would go ahead of me, and now you went ahead of me to heaven." And my mom, she's always self-conscious about her words. And she thinks that what she's saying is embarrassing, but I thought what she said was so beautiful. I thought that reflected so much faith, so much humanity. I couldn't find better words. So I was really proud of her.
What was your dad like? What kind of father was
he? He was a quiet man, stoic is probably the best word to describe. I'm sure so many sons can relate to what I'm saying right now. His fathers usually aren't that personable. So my dad wouldn't talk about himself unless you asked him. And, I'm more fearful. And I would ask him questions like, "What do you like to do? And what type of person are you?" And it seems kind of silly to mention this, but he really enjoyed fishing. We would, I remember we all, my mom, my brother, his girlfriend Olivia, and I, and my dad, we all went to Cabela's, that sporting outlet. and he was looking for some fishing rods and some bait. And we were there for like maybe an hour or two because he couldn't decide between a $70 fishing rod and a $65 fishing rod that were almost exactly identical. And he wasn't even that good at fishing. Like that's the really funny part. He enjoyed fishing. He would drive for hours to go fishing. Like there's not that many bodies of water in Texas. Not that many good fishing spots, it seems. We would drive for hours to go fishing with my mom early in the morning. And he would come back sometimes with a lot of fish, sometimes with not that much fish. And one time he came back with a bucket full. And we asked him if he did well, and he's like, yeah. And my mom was like, no, he did not do well. I was like, well, what do you mean? There are all these fish in this bucket. Turns out all the other fishermen noticed his bad luck, that he wasn't catching anything, and they pitied him, so they shared their fish with him. So he was a simple man who loved simple things. He liked watching TV. He liked cooking meals for his family. He loved eating with his family.
Loved you guys.
He really loved us. He really loved us. He was a good man. I mean, I would go so far as to say a great man. Yeah. Immigrated from China to America so that he could start a new life here and provide. And he really loved his country, and from everything that I've seen and experienced, clearly this country loved him.
What would you say to the person who did this?
I thought about that. I think everyone in this family has thought about that. I'd like to say what my dad would. My dad is such a generous, forgiving man. He's a man of faith. And so, I'm sure within a second of it happening, he already forgave him. Yeah, I'm sure he forgave him. And my mom forgave him. When I was in Minnesota, hundreds of miles away from my dad in the hospital, just wishing I could hold his hand. I also forgave him. I forgave him. Yeah. Now, I think we deserve justice. Not only his family, but all his loved ones. In society, we deserve justice. But, yeah, I forgive him. But, yeah, my hope is that this person is found and that justice is rendered so that we can all have closure. I think it's when you do something wrong, you want that revealed so that you can be forgiven. I don't think you want to live with that mistake on your shoulders for the rest of your life.
I see that your dad's crossed him.
Yes, it's a pretty poor-looking cross. I hope we can find a better one than that, but yes, that does appear to be a cross.
It doesn't look bad. No, it looks good. Is there anything that you would say to your father now?
My dad, I mean, there's so many things I can tell the world about my dad. I prayed that I would have the opportunity to tell the world about my dad, because I'm not one to boast about my dad. He's a quiet man, and I guess it's only right that his sons not to talk too much about him.
How many kids?
My older brother and two kids. I know that, like, I called my dad almost every day when I was in Minnesota about pretty much anything, and I told him I loved him. He told me he loved me. I mean, those are such, like, pretty words. I will tell him to again. I'll say I love you to him again, because they're worth hearing. They're worth hearing every day. And you know what? They're also true words. And truth deserves to be said. So I first tell him I love him. Everyone in his family loves him. I mean, it almost seems like the entire world loves him. And he would be embarrassed by that, by all the attention he's receiving. And he'd probably say, I love you too. And if he didn't say it with his words, he'd say it with his actions. Because, like, his spirit, his kindness, his generosity, like, he may not have been a man of words, but he was a man of actions, and all of his actions spoke so loudly of his character and his goodness. And so I remember that. We all remember that.
Do you guys mind showing us where it happened?
Yeah, sure. I'm comfortable talking as long as you need.
What?
I'm comfortable talking as long as you need. I feel like I have a deficit I need to compensate for.
What?
I have a deficit I need to compensate for because I never talked about my dad. And now I can talk about him as much as I want. People will listen. It's not here. It's over. It's still over there. My mom and dad, they enjoy, or at least my mom enjoys, walking around the neighborhood every day. She was starting to run to become more fit. And my dad, he doesn't like walking. He doesn't like doing much physical activity, but he loved my mother enough to accompany her on her walk. So, like, they would hold hands together, and I'm sure they would just talk for hours. So they walked around. They were coming home from this direction. They were on the grass, several feet from the road. They were probably walking right around here when a car coming from that direction, traveling at, I don't know, I've been told 70 miles per hour, veered off the road and struck my dad from behind. And my dad, he flew. And he flew. He flew in the air like a rag doll. And apparently his head landed in that ditch and his feet were further away. That's how he was oriented. He was hit so hard, his shoes flew off. And one of his shoes landed right there. The other shoe landed all the way over there.
Where the blue markers are?
On the street, where that blue marker is, yes.
Were these the tire tracks?
Yeah.
So they really veered off.
Yeah.
and hit your father.
Car from the street veered off. You can see the tire tracks right there.
Police marked that.
And the police marked that, right?
Is there any part of you that thinks this was intentional?
Our first instinct was, but we have no idea. I mean, there's so much happening, and if you're paying attention to the news and you're trying to make sense of something so incomprehensible, you'd be inclined to say that this is part of a greater narrative. Like, I know about tragedies that happened in California. I know about tragedies that happened in Georgia, and I personally know about a tragedy that happened in Texas. And even the sky is crying. Like, maybe you piece it all together and you say like they're related.
It's hard not to think about that, right?
I have no idea, and it is conceivable that this was an accident, that the driver was negligent and on his phone, or maybe drunk. It's conceivable that this was malicious and like possibly driven by racism. Irrespective of the actual reason, I think the world can have less of that. It can have less negligence. It can have less drunkenness. It can have less racism. It can have less of all those evils, because those evils kill good people. So the only consolation that, or at least one of the consolations that I have seen, is that, like, with the death of one good man, hundreds, if not thousands, rise to carry his burden. So my brother is one good man. I'm one good man. And we have so many friends, so many people, even strangers, who have all stepped up to take up his mantle.
You said the sky is crying?
It's crying hard. Yeah.
Kind of fitting, huh?
I cried all day and all night. When I first heard, I slept for 3 hours at 2 a.m. and when I woke up, I was crying. I cried from the northernmost state of this country to the southernmost state of this country. I cried so much that I was concerned I wouldn't be able to cry now. Yeah, I thought I was all empty, and that my soul would have some mercy on my eyes, which hurt so much, and cry in their stead.
Thank you guys for talking to us, and I know it's hard.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll help somewhat.
I mean, it helps to know just how many people were touched by him.
Yeah.
Right. There are flowers right here. Like, we don't have a place, and we don't have a marker yet. And we don't have a marker for my father yet, but people are already placing these flowers here, and I wrote something, and I'll probably posted here too. Like a lot of people love my dad because he was so generous. Like he gave so freely to the church, to his family, to his friends, to his strangers. Like maybe that generosity made him a worse businessman because this is a pretty good story. Like he's a landlord. We have all these properties, and like some of our tenants didn't pay, not for 1 month, not for 2 months. They didn't pay for years. And my mom would complain to my dad, like, you need to evict these tenants, but he didn't have the heart to. He didn't have the heart to. It's like so. And one of my friends, before we moved here, we lived in Irving, and one of my friends, like he came over and we had prepared, I think it was a boar, like some wild game. You know, taking hours and hours of preparation, just hard work. My fingers were numb from being bathed in this ice cold water, you know, to prepare. But my friend came over and like my dad shared food with him. Like he let my friend eat as much as he wanted. And my friend, when I was talking to my friend at 2 a.m. that day, and he said, like, I remember that. I remember how generous your dad was. So even people who just incidentally met him knew how kind he is. Yeah. If there's one story that I feel like needs to be shared, it's this one. And it may contain some factual inaccuracies because I didn't hear it firsthand and I don't have the best memory. But like my mom and dad, they immigrated from China to here. And already, like my mom was pregnant, 5 months pregnant when she flew over here. My dad came in advance to prepare the way. And so my brother was born, and they studied at Kansas State University, like STEM related fields. Both of them worked as engineers for some time. But while they were in college and I guess immediately afterwards, like my dad he did all sorts of menial jobs. Like he delivered newspapers and he repaired bikes, and he sold cars, because despite his higher education in China and here, you know, people didn't really want to hire him. So he did all this to provide, and eventually he and my mom moved to Texas, Amarillo, Texas, and they met two American strangers, people who would later become like our adoptive grandparents, and those strangers showed kindness to these two foreigners. It's like Cheryl, she helped my mom learn English, helped her raise my brother, and with their lives, Cheryl and her husband Bob demonstrated the love of God. And my parents, they're both scientific thinkers. Like China is like a secular country at that time, and probably still is. And so they were not inclined to believe in God,
Yeah.
in Jesus, in anything like that. But when you're confronted by something so wonderful, just like random acts of kindness of complete strangers, it's like what answer do you have to that?
Yeah.
So they were compelled to believe. That's why my dad is a Christian. First and foremost, he's a Christian. I thought maybe my mom would regret that we moved here. Like maybe she would regret coming to America because then this wouldn't have happened. I thought maybe she'd regret moving to Texas because then this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
But there are so many good things
Yeah.
that have happened in America, in Texas, that show that like this place really loves us.
Yeah.
So like whatever happened to us, whatever is happening across the country, to Asian people, to black people, to white people, to all people. I mean, I still, from the bottom of my heart, I still believe that like, this country is full of opportunity and really does love us.
Well, you kind of running behind you, but actually it's a good looking picture. Okay. Good job. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
这可以码在这里是吧？我可以用这个。
在猜呢，如果他们两个也没戴口罩啊，会不会那个车身前那边会开始